Dum 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 dum. Hello, hello, hello. I'm just on for a quick having to address a pretty serious accusation, totally false and maliciously being made against me. And yeah, I know it's drama, but it concerns my endless soup video, the one that I referred to the people who were making videos about attacking white people, that encouraging attacks on white people over the food stamp issue or the EBT or SNAP issue that we're just getting out of because the government's figuring out how to move forward. Um, and there's a group of young black women, most of them pretty young. I didn't see too many that were over 30, um, making some extremely violent, hateful videos, not only encouraging a massive shoplifting. In fact, they even tried to have a date and time set so that people, they said, they're not going to arrest if you show up as a crowd and, mob shoplift. And that's bad enough that they were encouraging that kind of activity. But they were also, some of them were also saying go after the individual whites, which actually did cause people, particularly people who live in mixed race neighborhoods of all colors, because there's a lot of black streamers and channel hosts, content creators, who were posting clips from those Ghetto Girl videos and very upset about it and saying, this is not right. This is not who we are. This is not what we do. Had nothing to do with being on food stamps. It had to do with the encouragement of violence over the question, the artificial crisis that was just created because the Democrats and the Republicans are arm wrestling over the budget. And the Democrats basically held food stamp recipients or EBT recipients or whatever you want to call them, they held them hostage. And there was a whole crew of young black women who made these extremely violent, hateful, and frankly ignorant videos. And I referred to that. I did not talk about them as such. But I said there are these Ghetto Girl videos where people are confused because they're acting as if the food stamps are being shut off, and that was never true. And I spoke about the fact that there was a suspension because of the government budget face-off, standoff that was going on between the Democrats and Republicans, and that it would certainly be straightened out within a week or two, which has been happening, and that as soon as the money starts flowing back into the budget, as soon as the Democrats let go of their chokehold on the budget, the programs would be put back in place. Trump never said he was ending food stamps. And of course, alongside it, though, there is investigation of fraud, which mostly involves illegals who are not Black Americans. Even though they may not be white, but a lot of them are white, they're not part of that community. They have been used against the Black Americans because they've been put into programs that the African American community does rely on more, disproportionately compared to the white community. There's all kinds of good reasons for that. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, so my reference to Ghetto Girls was not a racial uh, attack on EBT recipients, but there's an individual in California who is definitely going to um, be in a lot of trouble before too much longer because of the factual lies. She stole that video. She's violating copyright because she's misrepresenting the content. She's trying to incite hatred against me. She talks about YouTube community guidelines of targeting people while she targets me, referring to me as the toothless and, going on. She has a cartoon that's clearly me. I mean, it shows an outfit I was wearing, one of my tops that I made. It shows the design on it. It shows a face that it's a cartoon face that you can say looks somewhat like me. So she is clearly on a hate campaign. And she's doing this against, she's associating me with a group of people because we're all online. Some of us do talk to each other. I have actually been on her show as a guest. I was foolish enough to respect her for a very short time. She misrepresents everything. She's now got a fellow in California who's a very interesting character, who works very closely with the same hate group that has been stalking families of murder victims. Tere Joyce, of course, is the California reporter, journalist that I'm talking about as being a significant part of this. Tere Joyce was trying to build a channel before she started her college thing, which she's now graduating from and moving on into master's degree or something. She got her baccalaureate. Um, but she was doing true crime channel building. She was trying to build herself as a true crime channel host. And she was following super soldier conspiracy kit figures like Max Spears, who died under very tragic circumstances. He died in Poland while he was there to be interviewed by some other conspiracy channel hosts. Um, they had something called Project Camelot, and they did a lot of that stuff. But so Max Spears, the description of his death fits what happens if you have a perforated ulcer, which can be a very bad, and it's a fatal thing at a certain point. It doesn't, there's nothing you can do about it. And I don't know what really happened. She likes to promote the murder conspiracy of it. But what was interesting is that this entire group that Tere Joyce is part of, that is targeting people, her group consists almost exclusively of people who have been charged with or otherwise associated with, known to own businesses in the pornographic industry or in porn adjacent industries. She promotes a man named Daniel Dowd, who was charged in a case involving aggravated sexual assault of an 8-year-old girl, pled down, left Texas. It was a situation that some people in Texas are still upset about. She associates with another one who was uh, part of the stalker ring, who got in trouble, got threatened with trouble by my police department because this woman, an Indiana person named Tammy Mathis, falsely presents herself as law enforcement. And she did that with my own police department here, who threatened her that, hey, she's going to be arrested. She comes down here because she's impersonating a police officer. And they questioned her on it because she was trying to behave like a police officer who was investigating me. Tere Joyce is doing the same thing. She doesn't impersonate police officer, but she pretends that there are criminal cases against me brought by Fresno State College and other. She associates her employer with things that never happened. I did, in fact, contact her employer several years ago, and it was, in fact, a legitimate report that they had a tutor, her, who was working with advanced placement high school students. Fresno City College is a community college. Many of the students are underage in terms of being under 18 because they are advanced placement high school students. At the time that she was working there, she had a resume out online that she had been a casting agent And she continues to work in the porn adjacent adult comedy routines, but she had been a casting agent for a production company called Barely Legal, not the Las Vegas movie called Barely Legal. That's a separate thing. There was, and I think still is, a production company that specializes in pornographic films made on the actor's 18th birthday. That's why they're called Barely Legal. And I contacted the college because she was listed. Terry Joyce Studios is listed with that company as one of their casting, a contractor who was doing casting for them. She also wrote films for them and acted in at least one. She wrote scripts and acted in at least one. And I contacted Fresno City College and asked if indeed she was a tutor there, would they be concerned to know about this? They said yes, they would be concerned. What was I alleging here? Because they said yes, she does teach here. And what do we don't know anything about this. And I gave them the links. They looked at the resume. I mean, it was a woman I was speaking to. She looked at the resume. She said, "Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We will look into it." And that constitutes actually a kind of a mandated report, because when you are in the teaching staff exposed to underage students, they do have an obligation to look into something like that, to find out if indeed your professional life as a porn producer, scriptwriter, casting agent, actress, all of those roles, if that is in fact endangering their students. Because the other part of it, as I explained, Terry Joyce is well known, and she's building her whole career now on it, of going on extremely obsessive revenge hate campaigns against individuals who have had, unfortunately, like I did, had some contact with her, showing her credentials and pretending to be a legitimate journalist. Then when you discover that she's totally unprofessional and you don't want anything to do with her, she starts the blackmail routine. She's doing it to an artist. She's doing it to Patrick Moran, an artist. She's doing it to Thomas Schoenberger, a music composer. Both Thomas Schoenberger and Patrick Moran have a lot of experience in their profession as composer and as visual artist with Hollywood production. Now, I'm not part of that world. I am an artist. I do have a background in fine art, um, fine art display, gallery shows and so on many years ago. And it does intersect with this in an interesting way, because the blackmail system does target artists. We are easily exploited for the value of our work. Our work can outlast us. If you can get control of an artist's body of work, even if that artist lives to a ripe old age, if you have copyright access through having made some kind of controlling relationship, you proceed to collect all the royalties on that person's work. It doesn't apply to me because my work isn't like either Patrick Moran's or Schoenberger's. Both of them are in fields of animation and music production that can produce ongoing royalties after they pass on. Mine work is not. It was just fine art, one of a kind. But she's misrepresenting the ghetto girl thing completely. She's got this guy, calls himself Urban Disciple, and this isn't the first time he's partnered up with this kind of white woman. He's a black guy. My only knowledge about him is that he was basically sicked on me by one of the people who were directly involved with my daughter's case a woman named Sheila Cavanaugh, another artist. There's a group that was involved with a website called Encyclopedia Dramatica. They were Sheila Cavanaugh herself was writing letters and signing my name to them, mocking my daughter's death. Now, as I say, Terry Joyce was trying to build a channel career, a media career on true crime. She wasn't doing too well. She did get involved with Max Spears before he died. She had at least one interview with him. She exploits his mother, drags his mother into her online dramas. She's obsessed with a man who wrote a book about satanic sexual abuse, a man named David Schroeder, who claims to have been a member of one of the families involved with the Franklin credit scandal. I think it was back in the early 80s. That involved some businessmen were trafficking young kids from Boys Town, the Catholic orphanage up there in Omaha, Nebraska. And Schroeder is from that area, and he claims that his stepfather was one of the people involved in that trafficking. And he claims to have witnessed some pretty horrific things. He has a lot of issues. And I tried to speak with him at one time because he was selling his book. He's published 2 books. He was part of a lecture circuit, a conference group called SMART, founded by a man named Neil Brick in Massachusetts. A very dear friend of mine who died under very suspicious circumstances in 2000 was a state police captain who was a lecturer in that same conference. I had one series of small contacts with David Schroeder about 6 years ago, trying to find out whether he had direct contact with my friend. And he said no. He gave me the dates and the places where he had been on the speaker's podium with his books, and they happened after my friend was killed or died, found dead, found unconscious, and never regained consciousness. Had fallen down the stairs into his basement. And say he's a Massachusetts state police captain who was in fact investigating this very group. This group goes back to the late 70s, early 80s. And every single time I dig into a particular set of contacts, particularly blackmail hostility contacts, where they're going after somebody, you find the same cluster. Terry Joyce, pornography industry. Daniel Dowd, aggravated assault on an 8-year-old girl, pled down to something stupid and allowed to move to Arizona. The Davises in Indiana, friends with Tammy Mathis, the fake cop. The Davises ran several porn adjacent and outright pornographic, in my opinion, businesses. One, a portfolio service for teenagers, getting teenagers to present themselves photographically, their portfolios, to people in media who could then contact them and use them in film. A member of that whole crowd is a man named Monograph, who was producing video that involved what appeared to be an 11-year-old girl, but he claimed this was an adult actress who could be, she was apparently a small woman and young enough looking that with little makeup she could be made to look like an 11-year-old girl, which, that can happen. He's kind of in the background of a lot of this. Directly involved with Terry Joyce or Dowd. Tammy Mathis was a guest. Terry Joyce presented her as actual law enforcement on her show. Highly unprofessional. The Davises have not only the portfolio service, but a poop fetish website. And Mrs. Davis, Cabana Davis, when she's not selling her book on channeled Gnostic Sophia stuff, she was running a poop fetish photography service and something related to Mrs. Mom. And apparently she's still active in some websites. I don't go to those places. What are some of the other people? The whole crowd is involved with that. Now, right now, this guy, Urban Disciple, I don't really know what goes on with. I've seen him promote and just really cringe stuff, disgusting, sexually graphic stuff. He's had continuous friendly relationships with a couple of twins, young men, one of whom had posted pictures of his own infant son, toddler, naked as his avatar in Facebook. He was using that as his avatar, a picture of his young son naked in a bathtub. Uh, and there was all kinds of accusations of, and there was a lot of weird stuff, drug related and child sex related. Urban Disciple often goes on feud rants about, he starts out pretending like he's criticizing this stuff, but then he goes into really disgusting pornographic speech, basically creating pornography with his mouth, and defends a lot of these people. He always runs to the defense of one of these porn adjacent or child trafficking oriented people. Tammy Mathis herself was involved with a website that was promoting what they call bronies, men who play with those plastic toys, pretty ponies, and it's a way that they contact between they create contact between children and interested men. No, that whole crowd, that's all like that. Now, getting back to the true crime thing, how the reason they go after families of victims of suspicious deaths, a lot of the victims are situations that have some contact with this conspiracy industry. Max Spears, for example, he's an actor, or he was an actor who was playing the role of someone who had been in the military. His own mother said he was never in the military. They grew up near a military base. He grew up there and he admired military guys and he wanted to get into acting and he wanted to play, he wanted to be John Wayne. He wanted to play military characters. So he got involved with this reality TV style of going around giving lectures pretending to be a super soldier. Terry Joyce was part of the industry promoting that as if it were real. She also, in the course of doing that, created what I think was a very exploitational relationship with his mother, and then used his mother, dragged his mother into her arguments with David Schroeder, who she is obsessed with harassing because David Schroeder feels compelled to react. David Schroeder conflates a lot of things. I mean, he has some pretty clear issues. Whether his book is factually true or not, I don't know. But the fact that he wrote that book is why he's being exploited and harassed by this so-called reporter, Terry Joyce, who is obsessed with attacking me because about 2 years ago, I made that phone call to the college and they did look into it. And she makes false statements that they have complaints, they're filing criminal complaints against me for making the call, which would be intimidation of a witness because a college who receives, or any school receives a notice that someone on their teaching staff has this kind of life going on outside And no one asked the college to fire her or do anything. I asked them if they wanted to look into whether or not she was exploiting their students. And I said specifically, my real concern, because I know California is a lot more liberal on sexual activity, particularly among young people, than many other states. And I'm in Texas. I said, my main concern is that if she has a friendly relationship with a student who then backs away from her obsession with going after and being vengeful and vindictive and calling herself a victim of the person who simply tried to walk away from her. I said, that's my concern, that these young kids have no clue how willing she is to ruin somebody's life simply because they said, hey, I don't really want to continue talking to you on this. That's what happened to me. Now she makes a big issue about this so-called phone call, and she's trying to lead people to believe I still make calls or whatever. She falsely presents the college call. She falsely presents a recorded call. I made a call to her recording machine, her phone machine, deliberately recorded myself saying, show this recording, play this recorded message for your police detective, because I had just gotten off the phone with her police department. She had made a video saying that they were looking for me, the Fresno City Police Department. So I called them up and said, you looking for me? Here I am. What's going on? And they're like, I don't know. Who are you? And I told them, they said, we never heard of you. I said, you don't have some kind of complaint from Tere Joyce Randolph? And they said, never heard of her. And the detective I was speaking to, because I was asking for, information as to a report on me, which you legally have the right to do. So the dispatcher who answered the phone passed it on to someone in the detective squad room who said, look, I'm looking through all our logs. Not only is there nothing going on with your name on it, but we don't even have a record that she ever called. Because if she had called them to complain that she wanted something done to me for things I say in YouTube, and they would have told her, well, ma'am, we're not going to get involved with that. You can hire a lawyer and sue her for defamation if that's what you want to do, but it's not a police matter. That's what they would have said. But they would also have logged it, that they received a complaint, no action taken. He said they don't even have that. She never even called at all. So the video was a totally false presentation at several levels. And again, I said, play this. What I did was I said, play this for your detective. Then I listed all the things she was doing to extort and blackmail, using emotional blackmail. And furthermore, one of the people she's attacking is a woman named Rebecca Dean, who uses the name Blazing Scar. And she's got this black guy, Urban Disciple, also attacking, which that goes, Blazing Scar gets involved with the drama with these people and always has. But it was Blazing Scar's case that showed me that it was no accident that people like Tere Joyce are focusing on families of suspicious suicide, controversial death victims. Blazing Scar recently said that when she was interviewed by a CBS, I'm pretty sure it was CBS, it might have been Fox News, but I'm pretty sure it was CBS reporter named Gabriel Enfield. And if you put Gabriel Enfield into X, you will see her official reporter page. She's a real journalist. Well, apparently, she was interested in interviewing Rebecca Dean because Rebecca Dean's experience involved a cold case in Rebecca Dean's family. A cold case murder of a young relative back in the early to mid 1980s. It was 1983 or something. And it was never solved. And Rebecca Dean had made a little documentary asking for people to step forward. If, as time goes on, there might be something out there. And she published the phone number of the cold case squad and all that. It was very professionally done. It was a very nice piece. But then the people who were involved with it, who are also involved with Terry Joyce, started to threaten and harass Rebecca Dean the same way Joyce threatens and harasses me and Becky Dean and others. And what Becky Dean said about Gabriel Enfield struck me as, there it is again. Gabriel Enfield had a death in her family. And because she's a reporter, I guess maybe there was some comment there. I don't know the details. Rebecca Dean doesn't even understand the significance of some of this. She's still involved in the personal drama, although she's definitely got her eyes open as to the nature of these people. But the part of the extortion ring specifically targeting families of murder victims and suspicious suicides heavily involves Terry Joyce Randolph and a few other Hollywood people. It's a reality TV industrial, it's a genre that they can make a lot of money with. If they put together a successful documentary, it can make $1 million on Netflix or some similar network. And then there's this other side of it where even if they don't successfully make a documentary, some of them, some individuals like Terry Joyce, can use emotional blackmail and outright slander, attacks, and harassment for personal gain. Terry Joyce Randolph has at least, she goes through a whole list of donation links while she pulls on the pity strings of unsuspecting viewers, and she takes clips and she tells them that people like me are evil, white supremacy. I'm not even that white, to be honest. I've talked about the fact that here in Texas, we've got people who call us coon-ass. Coon-ass refers to mixed race because Cajun people and Creole people we don't go by white and black. French Americans, Cajuns in the South are not considered white by whites, you see. And my statement about ghetto girls was not saying that everyone on food stamps is a ghetto girl. And I referred to the fact that black people when they say somebody is ghetto and they're talking about one of their own kind, they're making a very specific statement about the character of that person being unacceptable in a great deal of the black community. The character of those young women encouraging attacks on white grocery shoppers was definitely a ghetto girl thing. And in the video, I didn't even criticize them. I simply said there are these videos, and then I went into, the whole thing about how to survive if you are being shut off or the food stamps are being reduced. And that's really what we need to be doing, is talking to, particularly to these young women who are not taught. They didn't have cooking classes in the high schools. They're too busy with gender and identity, racial identity classes to teach young men and women how to manage their groceries, how to cook from scratch. And if you know how to cook from basic ingredients, doing things like making your own cream cheese, my next effort is going to be making my own ketchup, basic foods that people buy. You can live on 1/4 to 1/3 the expenses of the prepared varieties. So you cut your grocery bill down to 1/3 or 1/4, plus you end up with much better product. Once you know what you're doing, you have gourmet level product. And I'm encouraging people to take that creative approach to the problem. But Terry Joyce Randolph is an extortion ring professional. She's definitely in the sex trafficking porn industry. And the college thanked me for bringing it to their attention. They didn't do anything to her. She didn't suffer any consequences because when they did what I asked them to do, which was look into what is she doing, they apparently did not find any students who had any complaints. And they had a detective call me up and asked me specifically, excuse me, excuse me, asked me specifically as to whether I knew of any video she had done with a student on the campus premises. So they had gone through several levels of investigation and they got down to the point of, well, was there hard evidence involving their campus? Well, excuse me, I obviously have to stop. But her attacks on me, I don't care about her opinions. People like her don't matter. I mean, she's a geriatric ex porn actress who's trying to exploit families of tragic victims of suicide, victims of unexplained so-called natural deaths that might not be natural. Even though I believe Max Spear's death was probably natural, there certainly was a question of neglect by the people whose guest he was, who didn't bother to call for medical assistance when he got very, very sick, and then he went to bed and died. Definitely, that could have been a natural death, but there still should have been something. And it was horrific how his mother was treated. And then Terry Joyce Randolph is right in there. It makes you cringe how she exploits that woman. And the whole group does that. There's one that Rebecca Dean, like I say, Rebecca Dean still doesn't get it. She's very friendly with one of the primary death cult individuals named Laurie Alexander Swan, heavily involved with several different deaths that come out of the same group of conspiracy chasing, religious cult chasing people. And Laurie Alexander has a history of befriending people who then end up dead. And this is one of the things that Terry Joyce did with Max Spears. They seek out people who are kind of living on the edge, and then they look for ways to be part of the story. I mean, it may be more of a mental illness that these people are coming together with this mental illness of inserting themselves into dramatic situations, because Laurie Alexander was involved with 3. There was a young man who was part of a conspiracy religion, an online religion, where the whole church was really just people in a big chat room. And it was all about chemtrail conspiracies and stuff like that. And Laurie Alexander was trying to get involved. She was working with Oxygen Network, so another professional Hollywood connection. Oxygen Network is a big network, and they have a whole series on cults and true crime. Laurie Alexander had befriended this guy. I saw his last name was Mineo, Mineo. I forget what his first name was. Might have been Stephen, I'm not sure. But anyway, she befriended him while he was still alive, and she was supposedly trying to get him involved in discussions with her so that she could present herself as a friend to the Oxygen Network. There's a lot of questions there. And you might think, well, that's pretty weird. That's just a weird coincidence. Except that she then goes on to befriend a man named David Swan before his parents, who became, she then married him, but his father and stepmother were both murdered, and it's still a cold case, unsolved murder in Florida, Clearwater, Florida, the murder of David and Mina Swan, who also did have connection back into this art world conspiracy issue where it appears that Mina Swan was not too happy about the pornographic art that was being brought into the school system. She was an elementary school art teacher. And there are many, many questions about that death, very suspicious. But what I'm trying to point out here is Laurie Alexander Swan, who got the name Swan because after their murder, she married young David Swan. I think they broke up since then. I'm not sure. But she was heavily involved with that. She also, there was also a situation where they were all trying to encourage a man who goes by the name DeFango. They were trying to exploit his situation as a YouTuber involved with this stuff. He was supposedly suicidal. I mean, he was play acting. But they tried to exploit that. Laurie Alexander Swan was part of that because she thought I was a friend of his because he had interviewed me on his show. And he had, the interview had established some factual elements of my own history, of where I've worked and who I am and who my family is. It wasn't about my daughter's death, but it was about my professional history as an artist and where I had worked. And that's all it was. There was nothing, as far as the Fango was concerned, it was nothing significant. But all of a sudden, this Laurie Alexander was part of the group going after him. He was part of the group that Tere Joyce also obsesses with. And, it's a social media thing where some of these people that are Hollywood connected are deliberately seeking out. I was calling them true crime ahead of time because they don't just seek out families of people who've already been killed or died under suspicious circumstances, but they seek out people who appear to be going into the danger zone. Another one is Isaac Cappy. That's another obsession of Tere Joyce, an actor who was making some highly controversial but frankly vague accusations about pedophilia in Hollywood. And people were beginning to challenge him to come out with some actionable details. He was like putting out these teaser things where nobody was, he would name names, but he wouldn't really come up with anything specific. And so he was play acting in the reality TV thing, and he started to get pushed in a certain direction. And he, again, had contact with a lot of the same individuals in this little network of the Davises with their porn adjacent group. A guy named Phoenix Enigma, whose wife was with Isaac Cappy when he was still alive, and definitely part of the push to really push him over the edge. And she was with him in a car a few days before he actually died. He died by apparently jumping off a bridge. And I've listened to the 911 recordings that they were playing, and that sounds authentic. It sounds like they were witnesses who were really authentically seeing a man somehow jumping off the bridge. So, but there's also the question of, well, what led to that? Because an engineered suicide is not a suicide. And that's a big open question. But again, you're looking at people who they find people who are living on the edge. And I know that some of the approaches made to me when this group, Laurie Alexander is one of them, and Terry Joyce is another example. This group makes friendly, apparently acceptable overtures to people. Well, some of them, as I recall, really tried to find out if I was depressed. And, I know that if I had given them any kind of response that they were looking for, they might have gone into trying to engineer something. Because I know that they tried they made some ridiculous things trying to frighten me, and I laughed at them. I said, come on, bring it. I still do that. I apologize for taking 45 minutes of your time with this, but it's a problem that's sorting itself out, and Terry Joyce is in for a very rude awakening before too much longer. But in the meantime, I do want people to be aware of this reality TV extortion, exploitation, emotional blackmail industry that she's part of. That's it for me. Catch you later. Denise Matteau, over and out.